Hey everybody, Steve here in Washington, D.C., and I'm hoping today to be able to visit the final resting place of President Woodrow Wilson. He's laid to rest in the National Cathedral here in Washington, D.C., and I was hoping to visit yesterday, but yesterday was Sunday, and according to their website, it's the only day of the week where they don't allow sightseers. The rest of the week, they do welcome sightseers, and if you want to just walk around the cathedral inside and out, and I believe it's about $10-15 to sightsee in the cathedral. So I've been having problems with my GPS on my phone. My Google GPS just hasn't been working at all. It just stopped and I haven't been able to get around anywhere. So as soon as I can get that fixed and figure out how to get to the cathedral, then hopefully it'll be open and I can get in and visit his gravesite today. One of the things that distinguishes Woodrow Wilson from all of the other presidents is that reportedly, while he was in office, he played more rounds of golf than any other president. Our last few presidents have also been really avid golfers, but apparently he holds the record for more than 1,000 rounds of golf while serving as president of the United States during his term. So that's a lot of golfing. And while Wilson may hold the record, Presidents Taft, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Nixon, Ford, H.W. Bush, Clinton, Obama, and Trump all did their best to catch up to his record while they were also in office. Wilson is also the only U.S. president to be buried or interred in Washington, D.C. The Washington National Cathedral is located just 5 miles northeast of the White House. Arlington National Cemetery is located less than 3 miles west of the White House on the other side of the Potomac River, and Presidents John F. Kennedy and William Howard Taft are both laid to rest there. And even though their grave sites are closer to the White House than Wilson's, Arlington National Cemetery is located in Arlington, Virginia, not Washington, D.C. All 3 presidential grave sites are located within walking distance of the White House, and technically there is a 4th presidential grave site also within walking distance of the White House. When John Quincy Adams, the 6th president of the United States, died in Washington, D.C. on February 23, 1848, at the age of 80, his body was briefly interred at Congressional Cemetery here in Washington, D.C., which is located about 4.5 miles southeast of the White House. A headstone was placed at the cemetery and remains there today as a cenotaph, but after arrangements could be made to have his body sent back to Quincy, Massachusetts, he was reinterred there. So if you happen to be visiting the White House or the Capitol building, just know that you can also walk to the grave sites of 3 U.S. presidents and the former gravesite of 1 U.S. president, provided you have very comfortable shoes and really like to walk. And if you look close, you can see that they incorrectly have his age listed as 79 at the time of his death. Thomas Woodrow Wilson only lived to be 67 years old, and like Adams, Wilson also died in Washington, D.C. He was born on December 28, 1856 in Staunton, Virginia, and died in Washington, D.C. on February 3, 1924. He was a Democrat and the 28th President of the United States and served from 1913 until 1921. Woodrow Wilson's first wife, Ellen Wilson, died in the White House in 1914, and she was laid to rest in Rome, Georgia at Myrtle Hill Cemetery in her family's plot. A year after Ellen's death, Woodrow Wilson married Edith Wilson, and she's laid to rest here in a crypt just below her husband's, and her name is inscribed on the wall just to the right of his crypt. President Wilson had a private funeral service at his nearby home, but 4 other U.S. presidents had very public funeral services right here at Washington National Cathedral. Funerals were held here for Dwight D. Eisenhower, Ronald Reagan, Gerald Ford, and George H.W. Bush. Of all the U.S. presidents, Woodrow Wilson is the only one interred in a cathedral. The bodies of Dwight and Mamie Eisenhower are interred in their small private chapel in Abilene, Kansas, and John Adams and John Quincy Adams are both interred in the basement of the United First Parish Church in Quincy, Massachusetts. And while the other 4 final resting places are all very impressive, Wilson's final resting place is certainly the most grand and is truly breathtaking in every way. It's pretty awe-inspiring, and you really do have to visit in person to grasp just how spectacular it really is. Construction on this cathedral began in 1907 and took 83 years to complete. And it's interesting to note that next year, 2024, will be the 100th anniversary of President Woodrow Wilson's death, and 100 years since he was laid to rest here. Have any of you been here in person, or do any of you plan to visit in person? Of all the famous grave sites I've ever visited, it's without a doubt one of my most favorite and most memorable visits. This week I want to thank my newest channel supporters, Sarah Magdalena, Carla, or My Daddy's Green Eyes, Dana Pretzer, Mary Herline, Cosma Monsoon, Mark Simpson, Michael Bodden, Chelsea Rackley, and Darlene Kuhn. Thank you all so much for your very kind and very generous donations to my channel using Patreon and YouTube Super Thanks. They're all very appreciated. And of course, thank you to all of you who've taken the time to subscribe to this channel. That really means a lot and helps a lot too. As always, thanks for joining me on another historic trip to the past. And until our next trip to the cemetery together, thanks for sharing the memories, everybody.